You know that feeling when someone in authority looks at you with genuine concern and says something that makes your entire world tilt sideways? I do. Because I'll never forget the moment a federal banking investigator sat across from me in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and said, "Mrs. Phillips, you need to retain legal counsel before you speak to your husband or your cousin about any of this." And in that moment, I thought he'd made a mistake. I thought he'd confused me with someone else. Because why would I need a lawyer to talk to my own family? I assumed there'd been an accounting error. Maybe someone transposed numbers in a quarterly filing. Maybe a vendor invoice got duplicated. I managed the books for our family's import business with obsessive precision. I triple-checked everything. So whatever this was, it had to be something small, something fixable, something that would make us laugh nervously in a week when it was all sorted out. But the investigator wasn't laughing. And when he slid that manila folder across the table toward me, I felt my hands go cold. My name is Julia Phillips. I'm 41 years old. For the last 18 years, I've been the managing partner of Phillips and Associates, a textile import company. My grandmother started in 1973 with nothing but a loan from a church community and a dream of bringing beautiful fabrics from Asia to small American businesses. What started as her selling silk scarves at weekend markets became a multi-million-dollar operation, supplying boutiques and design houses across the country. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you this because my reputation was everything. In our industry, your word is your bond. I'd built relationships with suppliers who trusted me, clients who depended on me, and a team who believed in me. I'd never missed a tax deadline, never bounced a check, never cut a corner. My credit score was 827. I was boring in the best possible way. I wasn't careless. I didn't live beyond my means. I drove a 7-year-old Volvo. I packed my lunch 4 days a week. My biggest indulgence was a monthly massage at the place near my gym. I trusted professionals to do their jobs. I followed every rule. And yet, somehow, I was sitting in that room being told I needed a lawyer. My grandmother built that business from nothing. She worked 16-hour days. She learned English by watching soap operas and reading product labels. She survived being the only Chinese woman in rooms full of men who didn't think she belonged there. When she died 8 years ago, she left the business to me and my Uncle Thomas, her only son. But the real inheritance, the one that mattered, was the legacy. The proof that an immigrant woman could create something lasting. Something that would provide for generations. The business wasn't just about money. It was about pride. It was about proving she mattered. And I'd spent nearly 2 decades making sure her legacy not only survived, but thrived. That's where Marcus comes in, my husband of 12 years. When I met him, he was a financial analyst at a mid-sized firm, charming and confident in that easy way some people have. He made me laugh. He remembered little things. On our 3rd date, he brought me ginger tea because I'd mentioned offhandedly that I'd had a cold the week before. That's the kind of man he seemed to be. Thoughtful, present. After we married, he offered to help with the business finances. "You're already doing so much," he'd say. "Let me take some of that off your plate." It seemed supportive. He'd review contracts, suggest investment opportunities, attend meetings when I was traveling. He never pushed. He was just there, helpful, reliable. And then there was Lily, my cousin. We were born on the same day, March 14th, 1983. Our mothers are sisters. They went into labor 6 hours apart and ended up in the same hospital. Growing up, people called us twins. We had matching birthday parties every year. We shared clothes, secrets, dreams. She was my best friend before I even understood what that meant. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. Little comments here and there. Must be nice to inherit a business instead of having to build one from scratch. Or, some people are just born lucky. I guess. She'd laugh after saying things like that, like they were jokes, but her eyes never quite matched her smile. When I got engaged to Marcus, She made a speech at my bridal shower about how I'd always gotten everything I wanted. She framed it as affectionate teasing. Everyone laughed, but I remember the edge in her voice, the way she held her wine glass just a little too tight. My university mentor, Professor Andrews, pulled me aside at the wedding reception. She'd known both Lily and me since we were 19. She taught the business ethics course, where Lily and I first started talking about maybe working together someday. Professor Andrews put her hand on my arm and said, "Julia, be careful. Not everyone who celebrates your success is happy about it." I was offended. I told her she was being cynical. I accused her of projecting. I said that Lily was my family, my best friend, and that she'd always been there for me. Professor Andrews just nodded slowly and said, "I hope you're right. I genuinely do." We didn't speak much after that. I felt like she'd insulted something sacred. Looking back, I realized she was trying to save me, and I threw her warning away because I couldn't imagine that someone I loved could hurt me on purpose. 3 years into my marriage, my Uncle Thomas decided to retire. He wanted to travel with his wife while they were still healthy enough to enjoy it. He offered to sell me his share of the business at a family discount. It was an opportunity to have full ownership, to make decisions without compromise. Marcus encouraged me enthusiastically. "This is your moment," he said. "Your grandmother would be so proud." I bought Uncle Thomas out. Marcus helped structure the financing. Lily congratulated me with a hug that lasted just a beat too long, and when she pulled away, her smile looked tired. I didn't notice when Marcus started having meetings without me. He said they were just preliminary discussions with potential investors. Nothing I needed to worry about yet. He'd update me later. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? I didn't notice when Lily started showing up at the office more often. She'd moved back to town after her divorce and said she was looking for purpose. She offered to help with marketing. Family should support family, she said, and I believed her. I didn't notice when documents I'd supposedly signed started appearing with signatures that looked almost, but not quite, like mine. Marcus would say, "Remember? We talked about this last month. You were exhausted. I told you I'd handle it." And I'd doubt my own memory because I was exhausted. I was running a growing business. Maybe I had forgotten. The gaslighting was so subtle, so patient. Looking back, I can see the architecture of it, the way they isolated me from information while making me feel supported. The way they created chaos and then positioned themselves as the solution. But when you're inside it, when the people doing it are the ones who are supposed to love you most, you don't see it. You blame yourself for being forgetful, for being stressed, for not being grateful enough for all their help. Then came the pressure. Marcus started talking about restructuring. "We need to modernize the ownership structure." He'd say, "Create an LLC, bring on partners, diversify the investment base." He had presentations prepared, projections, market analysis. It all looked so professional. Lily started talking about fairness. "Grandma loved both of us equally," she'd say. "Don't you think it's strange that you got everything and I got nothing?" She'd say it casually, while we were having coffee, like it was just a thought, not an accusation. They wanted me to sign papers, add Marcus as a co-owner, add Lily as a partner, restructure the trust, move assets. And every time I hesitated, they had an explanation ready. Every time I asked questions, they made me feel stupid for not understanding basic financial strategy. Every time I wanted to wait, they made me feel like I was holding everyone back. But I kept hesitating. Something felt wrong. I couldn't articulate it. I just knew that the business my grandmother built felt like it was slipping through my fingers, even though I was the one supposedly making all the decisions. Then I got the call to come to that meeting with the federal investigator and that manila folder. Inside were bank statements I'd never seen, transfers I'd never authorized, signatures that looked like mine but weren't. A paper trail of embezzlement that led directly to accounts in my name, accounts I didn't know existed. "Mrs. Phillips," the investigator said quietly, "someone has been systematically stealing from your business for approximately 6 years. They've created a forensic trail that makes it appear you've been funneling money into offshore accounts. There's documentation suggesting you've been preparing to flee the country. And there's a clause in your grandmother's trust that states if you're convicted of any financial crime, your inheritance is forfeit and reverts to the next eligible family member. He paused, watched me process that. The next eligible family member is your cousin, Lily, who, according to our investigation, has been working with your husband Marcus to build this case against you. They've been planning this for over 6 years, since before he married you. We believe the marriage itself may have been part of the strategy to gain access and credibility. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. This wasn't an accounting error. This was a plan. A long, patient, methodical plan to destroy me. There's more, the investigator continued. We found communications suggesting they intended to use these charges to claim you're an unfit parent. Your husband has already consulted adoption attorneys. The plan was to have you arrested, take custody of your son, and then give him up for adoption. Eliminate all ties. Start fresh with the business and the money, and no obligations. My son. They were going to take my son. Everything I thought I knew shattered in that moment. My husband wasn't my husband. He was an actor playing a role. My best friend wasn't my friend. She was someone who'd spent decades hating me, waiting for the perfect moment to take everything I had, and they'd almost succeeded. If the investigators' team hadn't caught inconsistencies in the timing of certain transactions, if they hadn't cross-referenced my actual travel records with the documentation claiming I'd been in the Cayman Islands on dates I was provably in Cleveland at a trade show, I'd be in handcuffs right now. The investigator explained their strategy in phases. Phase 1 was access. Marcus married me, gained my trust, positioned himself as the helpful partner. Phase 2 was creating the false paper trail. Forged signatures, fake transactions, shell companies, all dated and documented with obsessive precision. Phase 3 was framing me, making sure every piece of evidence pointed to me as the criminal. Phase 4 was triggering the legal clause, getting me arrested and convicted so the inheritance would revert to Lily. Phase 5 was taking everything, the business, the money, the legacy, my child. Everything my grandmother built, everything I'd protected, gone. I sat in that conference room and felt something break inside me. Then something else, something colder and clearer, clicked into place. I didn't cry. Not then. I looked at the investigator and said, "What do I need to do?" He told me they had enough evidence to prove what Marcus and Lily had done, but that the case would be stronger if we could catch them in the act, if we could document them trying to execute the final phase. And he told me I couldn't let them know I knew. I had to go home, kiss my husband, have coffee with my cousin, pretend everything was normal, while building the case that would end them. So that's what I did. I went home. Marcus asked how my day was. I said it was fine. He made dinner, we watched television, I laughed at his jokes, and inside, I was screaming. I hired a forensic accountant through Professor Andrews, who I'd called to apologize to, and who immediately said, "Tell me what you need." I hired a private investigator. I collected every statement, every contract, every email. I recorded conversations. When Marcus suggested I sign something, I'd photograph it before and after. When Lily made comments about the business, I'd document them. For 3 months, I lived a double life, smiling on the surface, building the case underneath. My lawyer suggested we wait for a public setting. Let them show their hand where witnesses can see it, he said. Make it undeniable. The annual board meeting for the business was coming up. It was usually just a formality. Review the year. Vote on next year's budget. Marcus had been pushing for Lily to be added to the board. She's family, he kept saying. And she's been so helpful. It's time to make it official. 2 days before the meeting, Marcus came to me with urgency in his voice. "Julia, I've been reviewing the books, and something's wrong. Really wrong. I think we need to call for an emergency audit. We might need to involve the authorities." He was trying to trigger it himself. He was going to discover the embezzlement he'd created and have me arrested before I could defend myself. I took a breath, nodded. You're right. We should address this at the board meeting. Transparency is important. He looked surprised, then pleased. He thought I was walking into the trap. The day of the meeting, I arrived early. Uncle Thomas was there, even though he'd retired. I'd asked him to come. Professor Andrews was there as an outside consultant. My lawyer was there, introduced as legal counsel for the business. The investigator was there, though no one knew who he was yet. And of course, Marcus and Lily. Marcus started the meeting by calling for an audit. He presented concerning irregularities he'd discovered. He suggested we needed to investigate before things got worse. He looked at me with fake concern in his eyes and said, "Julia, I know this is difficult, but we have to protect the business, even from family if necessary." Lily nodded sympathetically. "These things happen. No one's saying you did anything on purpose. Maybe you just got in over your head." They were so confident, so certain they'd won. I let them finish. Then I opened my laptop. "You're right, Marcus. We do need to talk about irregularities." I pulled up the first slide, like the account opened in my name in Grand Cayman on March 3, 2018. Except I was in Cleveland that day, at the Textile Innovation Conference. Here's my hotel receipt, my conference badge, and security footage from the venue showing me at a workshop at the exact time someone using my identity was supposedly opening that account in the Caribbean. Marcus's face went pale. Lily shifted in her seat. I clicked to the next slide. Or we could talk about the transfers made from the business account to that offshore account, transfers authorized with my signature. Except a forensic handwriting analyst confirmed this signature isn't mine. The pressure points are wrong. The letter formation is wrong. Someone practiced my signature. Someone who had access to documents I'd actually signed. Someone like my husband, who'd been handling financial paperwork for years. I looked at Marcus. He couldn't hold my gaze. Or we could discuss the emails between you, Marcus, and you, Lily, planning this. Discussing timelines. Debating whether to wait until after I had our son so you could use custody as additional leverage. Deciding that yes, adoption would be cleaner, less complicated. Lily stood up. "This is insane! Julia, what are you?" "Sit down, Lily." My voice was ice. "I'm not finished." The investigator stood, showed his credentials. "I'm Special Agent Morrison with the Federal Banking Investigation Unit. Mr. Phillips, Miss Phillips, you're both under investigation for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and wire fraud. I'd advise you not to leave this room." I watched the color drain from both their faces, watched reality hit them. All those years of planning, all that patience, all that certainty that they were smarter than me, and it crumbled in minutes. Marcus tried to argue, said I was fabricating evidence, that I was mentally unstable, that everyone knew I'd been under stress. He looked to Lily for support, but Lily was staring at me with something like hatred and something like respect. She'd underestimated me. They both had. They'd assumed that because I was trusting, I was weak. Because I was kind, I was stupid. They'd mistaken love for blindness. "You were my best friend," I said to Lily. "We were born on the same day. Our mothers cried together when we took our first steps. You were the first person I told when I got my period. When I lost my virginity, when I thought I might be pregnant, you knew everything about me. And you spent years, planning how to destroy me." She didn't answer. What could she say? "And you," I turned to Marcus. "You married me to steal from me. You held my son when he was born and you were already planning to give him away. What kind of person does that?" He still tried to spin it, tried to say I was misunderstanding, that he loved me, that this was all a mistake. "The only mistake," I said, "was yours. You thought I wouldn't fight back. You thought I'd just accept it when you destroyed me. You thought wrong." Agent Morrison and his team escorted them out. Marcus tried to grab my arm as he passed, said we needed to talk. that I owed him a chance to explain. I stepped back. Don't touch me. You lost that right. The aftermath was brutal. The arrest made the news. Not huge news, but local outlets picked it up. Local business owners, husband and cousin charged in elaborate fraud scheme. My name was mentioned. My company. My grandmother's legacy. It should have been my worst nightmare. But it wasn't. Because people rallied. Clients called to say they'd never doubted me. Suppliers sent messages of support. Professor Andrews organized a legal defense fund before I could even ask. Uncle Thomas came back to help run the business temporarily while I dealt with everything. The trial took 8 months. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus tried to claim he'd been manipulated by Lily. Lily tried to claim she'd been manipulated by Marcus. They turned on each other beautifully. Both were convicted. Marcus got 12 years. Lily got 10. They'll both be disbarred from ever holding fiduciary positions again. Their reputations, their careers, their futures destroyed. My marriage was annulled. A judge ruled it had been fraudulent from the beginning. Marcus never loved me. He'd been running a long con, and the law acknowledged that. The divorce settlement gave me everything because he'd brought nothing legitimate into the marriage. Lily's parents, my aunt and uncle, came to me. They were destroyed. Their daughter had done something unforgivable. They didn't make excuses for her. They just apologized and asked if someday, maybe, I could forgive them for not seeing what she'd become. I told them they didn't need my forgiveness. They weren't responsible for her choices. The hardest part was explaining it to my son. He was 8, old enough to know something was wrong, old enough to hear whispers at school. I sat him down and told him an age-appropriate version of the truth. That his father had made very bad choices. That sometimes people we love disappoint us. That it wasn't his fault. It would never be his fault. He asked if he'd see his dad again. I said that would be up to him when he was older. That I wouldn't stop him, but I also wouldn't force him. He nodded, thought about it, then said, I think I'm mad at him. I told him that was okay, that he was allowed to feel however he felt. 3 weeks after the trial ended, Professor Andrews and I had lunch. She didn't say, I told you so. She just asked how I was holding up. I told her some days were harder than others. That I still had moments where I couldn't believe it had happened, where I wondered what I'd missed, what I could have done differently. She shook her head. You trusted the people you loved. That's not a failing, Julia. That's being human. They're the ones who failed, not you. I needed to hear that. I'd been blaming myself for not seeing it, for not being suspicious enough, for being too naive. But she was right. Trusting people isn't weakness. Breaking trust is. The business survived, thrived, even. Turns out, when you remove people who are actively sabotaging you, things run a lot smoother. We had our best year on record. I promoted 3 employees to management positions, started a mentorship program for young women in business, named after my grandmother, built something that honored her legacy properly. Uncle Thomas officially retired again, but this time with peace of mind. He knew the business was safe, that I was safe. Before he left, he told me he'd always known I had my grandmother's strength. She'd be proud of you, he said, not for having the business, for protecting it. I reconciled with Professor Andrews fully, told her I should have listened. She waved it off, but I could see it meant something to her. We have dinner once a month now. She's the godmother I chose for my son, replacing the godmother who'd tried to destroy us. I learned something through all of this, something I wish I'd known earlier, but maybe we only learned certain truths through pain. Blood doesn't make family. Shared DNA doesn't create loyalty. Family is the people who show up when things fall apart, who fight for you when you can't fight for yourself, who tell you the truth even when it costs them your affection. My grandmother used to say, trust is built slowly and destroyed quickly. I thought she was talking about business, but she was talking about everything, every relationship, every bond. She knew that trust is the most valuable thing we have, and the people who abuse it, who weaponize it, they're telling you exactly who they are. I think about the person I was before that meeting with Agent Morrison. So trusting, so certain that love and loyalty were the same thing. I miss that innocence sometimes, but I don't regret losing it. Because now I know, now I see, and I'll never be caught off guard like that again. My son asked me recently if I was sad that I didn't have more family. I told him, we have plenty of family. They just don't all share our last name. He understood. He's growing up knowing that loyalty is earned, not inherited. That's a hard lesson, but it's an important one. Some nights, I sit in my grandmother's old office. I kept everything the way she had it. Her desk, her filing cabinets. The photo of her in front of her first market stall, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. And I talk to her, tell her about the business, about the close call, about how I almost lost everything she built. I like to think she hears me. I like to think she knows her legacy is safe. Not because I'm perfect, not because I saw the betrayal coming, but because when I finally understood what was happening, I fought. I didn't roll over. I didn't accept defeat. I protected what she'd given me with everything I had. That's what matters. Not that we never get betrayed, not that we never make mistakes or trust the wrong people, but that when it counts, when everything is on the line, we find the strength to fight back. The people who smile the hardest sometimes plan the longest betrayals. Remember that, not because you should live in fear, not because you should suspect everyone, but because you should know your worth, know what you've built, and be ready to protect it. Stay strong, trust wisely, and never let anyone make you doubt your own value. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you to protect what matters, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you're stronger than anyone betting against you realizes. Thanks for listening.